This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
As we enter the second half of the season, we continue our trip around North America. This time, we enter Road America, and it's located between the cities of Milwaukee and Green Bay in Wisconsin in the United States of America, which hosts the 8th round of the SimLab Pro Cup for 2019. All coverage today is on RaceSpotTV, a throwback to some RaceSpot music in the past here today around this 6.5 kilometer 6.5 kilometer circuit. I'm getting so distracted. 4 miles in length, of course, as well. It's a clockwise circuit in nature. 14 turns out there on the racetrack, 5 to the left, the other 9 to the right. There's 14 laps of racing action coming up to challenge these drivers today as well. And the elevation change today is quite constant around this Road America circuit. Jonathan Swan in the commentary booth alongside Randolph Cheneth in production and on commentary here today. Randy, we're trying to make some RaceSpot music throwback to the past, and it is such a good throwback. We seem to get the tech issues here with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know what in the world's going on. I don't know why it's doing this to me over and over. For some reason, a setting I've turned off is not staying off, but hopefully we'll just keep the throwback music going, and with it, we'll bring up your championship standings as, well, that is actually not the right option that I wanted at all. That is the right option that I wanted to bring up. There we are. Let's take a look at our championship standings, and Oldest Putzkellis has just continued to dominate this championship, Johnny. Nearly 50 points clear of Fabio Berchtold in second, who has 135 points. Oldest at 184. Daniel Fletcher at 131, making it tight for second with Jean-Michael Noyon, who we haven't seen as much as memory serves, in fourth still, with Harley Lewis in fifth, closely followed by the likes of John Morgan and Pete Tinkler. But Oldest still been dominant.
Certainly has been. And today, of course, as well, he is currently on the front row in qualifying, but the ever quick Daniel Fletcher is up there on provisional pole for the moment. These drivers only have 4 laps here around Road America, and it's a very long lap, Randy. So the 10 minutes you have available in qualifying, you can't make a mistake and return back to the pits. You want these tires up to their optimum pressures, up to their optimum temperatures, and you just have to gradually build those 4 laps. Is that quite a challenge, of course, for a driver to do that?
Yeah, it definitely is, especially here at a track like this. I think it's going to be a fun race for sure. I think very challenging racetrack, very challenging grid overall. It is a relatively small grid, that said, but I think the slipstream around this place should keep them tight.
Martin Arnoldus will not qualify for today's event, of course, as well. That is by choice. He wants to start down the rear of the order. and work on a bit of overtaking. And that's something, Randy, that Ray Alfala's talked about before, where he's sometimes not qualified for an event at any NASCAR oval, and he just works on his overtaking, works on coming through the field, managing traffic, all these other things, of course, as well. So it's a good strategy too, but if you're biting for a championship, not the best option.
Yeah, but it's also sort of how seriously are you taking this series? Not saying that people aren't taking it seriously, but I think you have to be somewhat reasonable for yourself of, okay, this is mostly a series that, we basically get some community members and run for fun. And I think that's what this SimLab Pro Cup is. And, because of that, I think Martin probably feels that, especially at a track like this, 13 cars is what we have total on the card for today. 14 laps at a very racy, very drafty Road America circuit, which is what it'll be for these Pro Mazda cars. Get out there, have some fun, run wheel to wheel, maybe with some people you don't typically run with. Martin is one of the quicker guys, and, maybe he gets to fight with a couple names that he doesn't typically see that qualify a little bit further down the order, and I think all's fair in that regards for Martin.
So today we'll be running a full pace lap for round 8 of the round 9, of the SimLab Pro Cup series for 2019 as well. Let's have a look at today's grid for this event from Road America. Daniel Fletcher on pole position for this rolling start, and he is alongside Aldous Putickless. Now, Daniel Fletcher's biggest challenge today will just be keeping the car on the racetrack. Apart from that, it's going to be a challenge to beat him out there on the circuit, and as I insinuate there, the only person who can really beat Daniel Fletcher is himself. Putickless starting from second. He needs a good haul of points for his championship challenge in that 666 car. On the second row includes Jean-Michel Nayon and Pete Tinkler. They will start from third and fourth. Ridley and Morgan head the third row of the grid, followed by Scott Kirshner and the ever-quick Fabio Berchtold. He's a lot quicker than that Fabio Berchtold, so we're assuming he'll be quicker here throughout the race. Starting from fourth, not the best qualifying performance. Steve Cube is starting from 9th, and Kurt Van Wagenen will round out your top 10. Arnoldus did not set a qualifying time, along with Don McCutcheon and Anthony Rice, who will head the back end of the order. So, pace lap begins here, Randy. We'll begin 14 laps of action in just about a few minutes' time. This is going to be a very long pace lap, to be honest with you. But Daniel Fletcher, like I said, the only person who can beat him is himself.
Yeah, you're right. We've seen that a couple times from Daniel this season, haven't we? Where he's had the pace and been in the right position, but just hasn't been able to pull it off. But he's got it sort of set up. This is potentially, I think, a track where he can redeem himself. Road America. It's a very good, very racy racetrack, but overall, there's not too many places where the track can really catch you out, especially in these little high downforce single-seaters, Johnny. The kink in some of the GT cars can be difficult because you don't have quite enough downforce to take that flat unless you're in some of the super high-end GT cars like the GTEs, and some of the GT3s can get their flat as well if you're brave. But for these guys, that's going to be easy peasy lemon squeezy as far as taking it flat out. You have the top of the hill going under the Corvette Bridge, which we're going to see on your cameras in just a moment. That's a potential trouble point, I think, as well. You might see some trouble. And then through that last sector, you kind of have that bump on that left-hand kink, sort of the penultimate corner. There is a couple awkward curbs there, both at the apex and the track out point. But besides that, I feel like if you're a driver who's struggling, maybe mentally, which maybe is what's happening with Daniel Fletcher, maybe not having, full confidence in himself, and, sort of mistakes keep compounding on top of that, this is, I think, a good track to potentially reset on before the halfway point of the season.
Yeah, most certainly. And that, what complex is it? The Carousel, turn 9 and 10. So that complex there, which is coming up in a moment, a lot of drivers struggle to just keep the rear end planted, and you see the car spin out there. I mean, what are the setup options you can use? Because I think you can soften the suspension for sure, but you just don't want to lose that feel from either the front end or the rear end, depending on which side of the car doesn't have that mechanical balance.
Yeah, you're right. And I honestly think around here, I wouldn't mind slightly favoring understeer just for that reason. You're going to be trimming the car out anyways, just because Road America has such long straights. You're going to be drafting with people the entire time. And I wouldn't be entirely against, maybe leave that wing up, that rear wing up, maybe an extra click and dial back the front one a little bit. You'll be tight through a couple of the corners, but you're going to be in dirty air anyway, so you'll be tight regardless. But I always, especially in these little single-seaters, Johnny, that are so light, I always like to favor a little bit of tightness, a little bit snug, rather than a little loose, because it usually, more often than not, a little bit of understeer you can kind of deal with and predict. A little bit of oversteer can sometimes turn into a lot of oversteer if you make a little bit of a mistake or catch some dirty air kind of awkwardly.
So the pace car will pull in just a few moments' time, and this grid will be ready to go for 14 laps of racing action. Daniel Fletcher will scream away out of the final corner. The rest of the field will follow, and it's going to be a long run all the way down to turn 1 here. Over 700 meters to turn 1 from that start-finish line. Pace car in, engines rev, Fletcher floors it. We go green for 14 laps of racing action. Noyon looking to the outside here for P2, but Particulous has that draft from Daniel Fletcher, and your top 3 remain stagnant for the moment. Pete Tinkler's lost a position to Craig Ridley. Craig Ridley promotes himself up in a 4th. Apart from that, Randy, very clean getaway for your Pro Masters.
And that's exactly what you want here at Road America. Turn 1 can at times be a trouble point when you have a really, really large grid. These guys, they get themselves single file and run through turn 1 clean. What's going to happen now? In towards turn 5. John Michael Noyon is going to send it on oldest Putekelis, it looks like, up the braking zone, nearly alongside of the 111 car, and he's through at the apex. So a textbook move there by John Michael Noyon. We have a spinner in the background. I believe it's an old Lotus F1 style paint scheme car I see just sitting back there stationary. It's John McCutchinson, who I think has had a self spin. He has not gotten into the wall, so an incident there. But Daniel Fletcher starting to break away a little bit after the 2nd and 3rd went side by side into turn 5. Will he be able to break the sniff of the slipstream, though, that the 111 Noyon will have?
It's going to be close for sure. Particulous has a great run out of here, out of turn 10, the carousel. The king will come up, and there's going to be an immense amount of dirty air as Fletcher. Oh, is Fletcher into the wall?
What?
He is. Huge technical issues for Daniel Fletcher. I was wondering why he was pulling to the inside. That car's done. His game's over. That's a high-speed incident here on lap 1 of the event. We'll have a look at it in just a moment's time, because this has turned into your battle for the lead, and your lead may be handed over to Jean-Michel Neon, but Particulous isn't going to give up that easy as they head through Bill Mitchell Bend for the first time here this afternoon. Particulous in 2nd. Noyon screams out of the final corner. He will lead lap 1 of this race ahead of Aldous Particulous. Ridley is 3rd with a draft here on the main straight. That is an incredible accident there, Randy, on lap 1.
Yeah, that's one of the bigger accidents I can remember seeing. I mean, I'm not even sure what happened. I don't know if I've ever seen an incident like that before. It looked like he had a little bit of wheel input still going into the wheel, but, entirely possible. It almost surely has to be technical difficulties if that's the way things went down. But it looked like he still had a wheel input of some sort. But what exactly, I don't know. We're talking about a driver that maybe was struggling with some maybe some mental hiccups. It's a disaster for him if for that to happen. And Oldest up the inside for the race lead now into 5.
Ridley's got a pounce here, but he's attacked by Pete Tinkler for P3. So Ridley could have had a chance there for the lead, right? And he's lost that chance. Where is he? No, he's in the 3rd position. I'm just reading Daniel Fletcher's given us word, Randy, that his Oculus, I'm assuming he means his Oculus Rift, has just failed on him.
Yeah, that's a disaster situation, and I've had similar points. I don't use VR, but I've had display failures before, and it's something I think everyone struggled with. Actually, I remember, Johnny, we're on the RaceSpot channel, so I can mention this series. I think it was an FSR driver at Hockenheim had all of his actual displays
Jim
fall
Paresis.
over. Yeah, I think he had all of his displays fall over on him after a bit of sawing the wheel back and forth. Yeah, I remember seeing you on that grid, but you know, it's one of those things that can always happen to you. You know, unfortunate for him to have that happen, and especially a disastrous point of the track to happen, Johnny. You know, if that happens down the front straightaway, if it goes out for a couple seconds, then maybe comes back. You know, you spend enough time on the front straight here, maybe even the straight from turn 3 down to turn 5, that you can deal with it. But going in towards the kink, it's you know, it's always going to end up in a big incident like that.
Yeah, put a shirt on Jim Paresis next time, as we see Craig Ridley attacking Shomashananya for P2. Particulars has, I mean, I thought he would have a comfortable lead here and break away, but you look at the qualifying difference between these top three. 0.4 of a second separated them, and you can certainly make up for that, Randy, with a draft or a tow here around Road America for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's the big point is he's not able to break away because of the slipstream. And you know, I was going to say before Daniel Fletcher made a mistake, he started breaking away. I was going to comment that Oldest shouldn't really fight for second hard with Noyon just so they don't lose the slipstream. That said, Noyon now, he wants to send it around the outside at turn 5. We've seen him send a couple aggressive moves already. And this one's actually, if he can hold the outside here under the bridge, but it's very difficult to do so, and he's not going to be able to. Oldest able to maintain the race lead on the inside. But these top couple cars, Johnny, I will say with them fighting, I think the top 4, they should have the pace to get the way from the likes of John Morgan and maybe Martin Arnoldus, who, by the way, after not qualifying, is already up to P number 6. So for the likes of John Michael Leon and Oldest Putekelis, it's one of the big, I think, things to kind of indicate potentially on the smarts a racer has. Sometimes when you're at a big draft track like this, where the slipstream is so important, sometimes it's better just to not fight with the car in front of you, even if you feel you have pace, because you're only going to slow each other down and stack the cars up behind you, which is exactly what we're seeing. That said, Noyon wants to lead this race, and he wants to do it from the front of the field, up into Canada corner, and the 111 takes the lead.
Canada corner is so thrilling, that right-hander. Then we had to Bill Mitchell-Ben, the left-hander, coming up here. And how about Martin Arnoldus? Now, Randy gave us an update. He was in P6 last time, before Randy began that sentence. Up into 5th as he makes his way past John Morgan. That is how quick Arnoldus is making his way through the field. That lead battle continues, though. Over the stretch here, we begin lap 4 as they cross the start-finish line, and they are alongside each other. That's Particulars and Noyon for your lead. Ridley has to back up the throttle. Tinkler has nowhere to go. Arnoldus is in this fight, of course, as well. 5 cars separated by half a second, and that is your battle for the lead here today for round 8 or round 9 of the SimLab Pro Cup for 2019.
And John Michael Noyon for 2 corners has held it around the outside of Oldest Putekelis. It sort of falls away from him on the run off of turn 3, but he has the momentum now working down underneath the Sargento Bridge. Up into turn 5, John Michael Noyon has the preferred line, and in towards the braking zone, he's going to get it done. The fight for 4th and 5th looks interesting as well. Arnoldus nearly makes it 2 into 1. He's going to go into 4th spot, though, gets around Pete Tinkler. Next in line will be the 22 of Craig Ridley in the Benetton-themed car. Oldest been able to hold on to his race lead, but man, oh man, Johnny, this is some of the best racing we've seen all season.
The hurry downs now as they head into the braking zone for turn 8. Carousel next, but you are right. Racing has been thrilling, and we've had this, haven't we? I mean, we had a lack of cars at Belle Isle the past couple of rounds, but it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. When you're this close and the racing action is this thrilling, doesn't matter what you have. And I used to, Randy, I think when I first got into sim racing, I got into sim racing in 2008, but around 2011, I used to be involved in a lot of league races and the V8 Supercar, and we used to have grids of 10 cars, but we're all on the same pace, and it used to be a fun league to race in.
Yeah, oftentimes that's one of the big things is just not getting, you know, it doesn't have to be a full field as the 666 car is going to defend from John Michael Leon once again. It's not about necessarily getting a full field, but just if all the drivers, like you said, are kind of on the same skill level, it's a lot of fun. I mean, I started out around the same time you did in the late 08, 09. We have a car around in the background. 00. of Scott Kirshner. No, it wasn't Scott Kirshner. Maybe Steve Cubey is who it was. It was just a self spin off the final corner. We won't show a replay of that. We saw it on the camera as a triple one on Oyon. He's going to take the race lead in towards turn 1. But we got a pile up behind him. Big pile up.
Ridley's gone. Oh, don't tell me Arnoldus is involved. He is. Martin Arnoldus was having such a great event. And he's off into the gravel. I don't think he's going to rejoin this race. He must be contemplating life at the moment. They're sitting in the gravel trap, but certainly something wrong. We'll take a look at the replay, Randy. But through turn 1, that was a huge incident as, I don't know, to me it looked like a domino effect when I saw it live.
It seems like it started with Arnoldus. I think he lost the car in the middle of the apex at turn 1, and then when he got loose, the cars behind him didn't have anywhere to go. So he there was an awkward moment. There may have actually been contact as well with Craig Ridley in the 22. I think those two came together, and once that happened, there's nothing that those guys behind could really do to avoid. The speeds are just so high at that point on the racetrack, and that's basically, that's stacked up and backed up so many cars. I mean, even the likes of John Morgan, who even really wasn't involved in the lead fight for the most part. I mean, he even got involved with that. We'll get an update on our actual running order. The 7 of Fabio Berchtold has, I think, circulated from 7th on the grid up into P number 3, and we talk about him. He managed to win a miracle race at Belle Isle. He gets gifted a podium position here as Noyon is going to take the race lead away from Oldest Putzkellis. But that's sort of a huge clump of cars taken out in really one relatively minor mistake.
So that lead battle continues between Noyon and Putzkellis. Berchtold, you're right. He started from 7th, but after the incident, actually made up spots. So now he's into 3rd after that. So 4 cars essentially moving out of the way for him. But that 5-6 car train for the lead is now down to 2, and it's between the surviving 2, the quickest 2 right now, apart from Daniel Fletcher, of course. Putzkellis now trades that lead advantage with Noyon, and he returns back into the first position. Slightly wide there through the exit is Uldis Putzkellis. I don't know why this right-hander, Randy, is turn 3, and why they have like a turn 2 after turn 1. There's no turn to me. I don't see anything.
It's like the slightest hint of a kink. If you look at the track map, the run from turn 1 to what is technically turn 3 is slightly curved, and because of that, they consider it a turn for reasons that even I will admit we don't understand. We actually talked about that on the walk-in 6 hour today. We just finished up the special event. We talked about the fact that in the United States, there's sort of this arbitrary corner numbering system where some tracks, every single corner will get a number. Some tracks, like Sonoma, for example, the famous example, have numbers, and some of the turns will be numbered and lettered. So you'll have like 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, that sort of shenaniganry. Other tracks, corners won't even get numbered. So, for example, at Watkins Glen, the bus stop chicane, that doesn't technically count as corners as per the track map. They don't actually count those, those 4. You can maybe even count it as 2. They don't even count it as a corner at all. So it's it's an interesting way here in the United States, and I'll say we need to probably come up with some standardized system for numbering our road courses, because we really don't know how to do it.
At the end of the day, a thrilling racetrack is a thrilling racetrack. And this one at Road America with the elevation changes, the sweeping corners, the mixture of slow to medium to fast corners, it's got a bit of everything. And you put it together nicely, Randy, at the beginning of this race. I can't remember if you said this on air at the moment, but there's a battle here for P4 as we talk about this. But you said, Road America, you likened it to the USA's Spa-Francorchamps.
Yeah, it's not just I'm not the one who came up with that comparison, but it's one that exists as we look at this battle for 4th. There's see a couple of damaged race cars in here, the 69, the 44, and the 00. But it sort of has the same feel. It's an extraordinarily high-speed track with some high-speed corners that you have to be, pretty brave to go through, and it sort of has a Spa-Francorchamps feel where there's points of the racetrack where you're just buzzing down on the straightaway through some trees, similar to the way you do, say, down the Kemmel straightaway at Spa. It's relatively similar length, kind of close-ish lap time. Spa's a little bit longer, and actually Road America, I think, will probably have a slightly lower average speed because a couple of the corners are slightly slower. but it is very, I think, similar in terms of themes. The only other one I think that even comes close to that is actually Watkins Glen. I think Watkins Glen has a very spa-like feel to it as well.
The only difference with Watkins Glen is there aren't really, unless you use the boot layout, and even then,
You don't have any slow
there aren't
corners.
really, yeah, there's no slow corners involved. But that's why, I mean, Watkins Glen, you approach the setup a lot different to any other racetrack. That's why I love the challenge, and I've driven a lot of cars around Watkins Glen, GT3s, you know, open wheelers, everything. And again, you know, you can run a high rake around there. You want that rear traction. You're not really worried about sort of running too high of a downforce, as long as you can get through sweeping corners and get full throttle through the carousel portion of the racetrack, the outer loop there. It's a nice setup challenge, to be honest with you. It's just a lot of people just hate it. I'm not sure why.
I think it's, and I actually talk about, we've actually had this discussion at my team recently because I know one of my teammates is one of the ones who isn't a fan of Watkins Glen. I think it's sort of I think it's an iRacing specific thing actually, because, you know, Watkins Glen was sort of one of the original really popular road courses they had on the sim. It's one of the oldest road courses that we have on the sim. You know, the likes of Laguna Seca always comes to mind as another one as we take a look back at the fight for the race lead. Oldest continues to lead the way there. It's because it's so old, so many people have sort of taken to it, and it's sort of become an iconic track that all the series use. And you get the NASCAR guys, because of course NASCAR runs there. So if there's a series running, a lot of times NASCAR guys might hop in there who maybe aren't experienced. And it's a relatively simple circuit, which, you know, I don't think a circuit necessarily needs to be difficult in order to be good. I don't think Spa is really all that difficult, especially with cars these days. You know, some of the difficult corners have really lost their difficulty with the likes of downforce. You know, Eau Rouge is now so easy flat, and even Blanchimont, if it's not flat, it's just a slight lift. It's not, you know, a crazy braking zone or anything like that like it used to be. But I think it's just sort of because it's such a relatively easy circuit, and because of, I think in particular, the slipstream tends to keep people together. I think sometimes, you know, it's online racing. Sometimes someone shoves a nose where they probably shouldn't be, and it causes an incident. I think people get the, you know, to quote my teammate, they don't like Watkins Glen because spanners are often there.
So your lead battle continues, and we'll look at your order throughout the field as they cross the start-finish line this lap round. We're on lap 8 of 14, as you can see. Lap 9 will begin next time round. There'll be 6 to go. And we're already halfway through this event right now. But these two up ahead of Puticlus and Noyon, I'm assuming as they cross the start-finish line, they should remain in this order. But Puticlus is starting to break that toe from Jean-Michel Noyon. It's 0.6 of a second now, the gap. And Noyon's got to be careful here. He's going to reel in the 666 car ahead. That is your lead battle for P1 and P2. These two started in second and third respectively. They're all up one position because Daniel Fletcher down the back end of the order had an incident on lap 1, a huge technical issue with his car, and was off into the wall, and his race was over. Behind them, Fabio Berchtold was promoted to third after another huge incident, took out a few runners, and they were demoted down the order and promoted Fabio Berchtold in that number 7 up into your final podium position provisionally. A couple of those drivers involved in that battle were John McCutcheon and Pete Tinkler as well. McCutcheon started from 12th, one position ahead of your final starting spot right now. Tinkler in 5th with a little bit of damage. He's just going to have to race to the end and claim as many points as he can for the moment. Then it's Kirshner, Van Wagenen, Anthony Rice having a good run in P8, staying consistent. Steve Cube has some damage, but he'll continue away in the 9th spot. John Morgan, of course, as well, with a lot of damage, is your last runner in the 10th position. Ridley and Arnoldus. Arnoldus, probably have to say, was the cause of that incident. Just missed his braking point into turn 1. And they are both out of this event. But your lead battle now, this is very important, Randy, for Jean-Michel Noyon to reel in particulars. The difficulty you have is, and I'm clutching at straws here because it's not such a huge incident, but such a huge, how can I put it, a huge thing to worry about. But if you're slipstreaming as much as Jean-Michel Noyon is doing, you may end this race with more fuel than you intended, and that could just make your car heavier.
Yeah, you could to a certain extent, but I think it's generally not as much an issue in these cars because you only carry like, what, 5 gallons of fuel. So it's not like you have a huge amount of fuel in the first place, and it's not like you consume a huge amount. Actually, I take that back. The car I know will hold a lot of fuel, but to go the distance in these races, I know it's generally just like a half dozen gallons of gas to really get you there. It could be relevant, but I don't think it's going to be relevant enough that that's what Noyon is really going to be thinking about. He kind of slipstreams up, and he's actually done well here. He has a good run, and he's going to go side by side with Oldest up here in towards turn 1, and he's going to take that race lead. And we talked about the fact, Johnny, that Oldest had, just a couple laps back had, maybe just started being able to just about break that slipstream. It's a good couple laps there from Michael Noyon to bring that gap back down and even take that race lead here with 5 laps to go.
Jean-Michel Noyon just cut out the front end of Oldest Particulus. That's a dangerous move to do in the braking zone, but Particulus more than skilled enough not to get in the way of that 111 car. Here they are alongside each other for the lead yet another time, and Particulus returns the favor. Breaks ahead of Jean-Michel Noyon and takes out that line in the braking zone, and they will remain in first and second yet again. So the position change there only lasting a couple of corners. Now Noyon, he seems to carry a lot of speed into corners, Randy, and when he doesn't, has a lot of off-throttle oversteer. So Noyon, it sounds ironic, but he's got to go quicker to not spin out.
Yeah, and sometimes that's just the way you get the car set up is, if your car doesn't like being off throttle, you really got to kind of just throw it in hard and spend as little time off the throttle as you can. So, it's kind of a disaster situation for him in that regard, especially because I think to get around here quick, sometimes you kind of have to leave a little bit on the table and turn to the corner entry and kind of roll the corner to make sure you get a very, very good exit. Now, granted, most of my racing around this place has been in Tin Tops GT cars, not the single-seaters that these guys are currently running. So with all the aero these guys have, probably a little bit more flexibility for them to work with and how they can tackle this racetrack. But right now, the 111 car primary concern has to be keeping the slipstream to Oldest Boutikellus at all costs. That's the one thing he cannot afford to lose, no matter what, over these last final 4 laps.
So the gap's half a second now, but I think 6/10, 7/10 after that, you're really in trouble for losing that toe. That's certainly how it's simulated on iRacing, it seems, with most cars. But Noyon here, as you can see, untroubled. Only half a second behind at the start-finish line. Lost the gap here, but you'll see at the end of this next straight, once they enter the Moraine sweep and enter turn 5 in just about 15 seconds time, you'll see Noyon close that gap up, but he's just too cautious on the exit, Noyon, right now. I'm not sure what's going on. And like I said, he needs to be carrying more speed into the corners to get that car dialed in. Is he struggling with tire wear?
Could be a little bit. Could be struggling with pressures as well. Could entirely be something he's really worked with, especially if he's been fighting with lockups. Could even be just trying to fight with the bias. If he's struggling with the balance of that car, could be moving that around, trying to sort of adjust it to himself. And, maybe it's not just ideal for him. I will say the 666 car Boutikellus, he's been really good through this middle sector. From about turn 5 to really coming through the kink is, I think, where Oldest is, pretty much put himself as the favorite for this race, because he seems to always stretch out about a car length in this section of the racetrack where the draft isn't as important.
Well, let me tell you, Jean-Michel Noyon had an 11-hour practice session to prepare for this event. So if the car's not dialed in now, he's in huge trouble. He should be prepared for this. Track conditions out there. It's partly cloudy skies, 27-degree track temp. So plenty of grip out there. It's not your 49 degrees or whatever I was testing at the other day in the F3.5. But it certainly had better than 27 degrees before. But there's plenty of grip out there available. And look at Noyon already reeling in Oldest Particulus right now. There's that mid-corner oversteer for Noyon as the car twitching through the apex as well. Particulus breaking the toes. Noyon going to react to this? I don't think so. He's not reacting.
Yeah, he doesn't seem too keen, does he? Which is a little bit interesting to me. Maybe they're playing the game, Johnny. It's something that you'll oftentimes see people do at these big draft tracks. Oftentimes it's the choice. Do I want to be the car in front, or do I want to be the car behind heading into the last couple of laps? And maybe for Noyon, maybe he's not concerned in the immediate couple laps of picking up the race lead. He may just want to save this for the final lap so Oldest doesn't have the opportunity to fire a move back on him as they work now down this next straight here for turn 3, through the little kink at turn 4, in towards turn number 5. I think Noyon right now is just concerned at staying behind Oldest, but keeping that slipstream. That said, that's risky business, because if you make one mistake and you lose the draft, you suddenly lost an entire opportunity to win the race because you were too patient in the last handful of laps.
2.5 laps to go. This is your closest battle out there on the racetrack, but Pete Tinkler and Scott Kirshner are very close for P4. They're just heading through turn 5 for the moment. They've just gone past the Moraine sweep. Now Kirshner is close behind, so we'll keep you posted on that, but it'll be the penultimate lap next time by as your leaders head through the ever-long carousel. You just wait an eternity to smack that right foot to the ground, get that throttle pedal going. The lead gap now is half a second. Don't panic, though. Noyon looks like he's doing this deliberately, just trying to get the strategy right and make that pass for the lead at just the right time. And this battle, I am for sure, will go down to that final lap for the moment. Now, I'm thinking, Randy, is Noyon pulling out of the slipstream not just to remain behind Particulars, but as I said earlier, he doesn't want to have too much fuel here for these last laps.
Yeah, could be trying to burn a little bit of extra fuel. Could also be potentially trying to keep the engine temperatures in check. That said, he's going to get in the slipstream this time, and I think this is a good time to start picking up the pressure. 2 to go. Noyon looks to the outside.
Noyon into the first position. Particulars forms up behind. Huge slide for Noyon on the apex. That slide was at 170 kilometers an hour. Particulars remains behind though, and let's see if he retaliates here and reclaims that lead with 1 3/4 laps to go.
As well held by John Michael, being able to hold that slide in towards turn 5 though. Will he be able to hold the position? Oldest Putekelis looks up the inside, and John Michael Noyon seems to have no intention of wanting to fight back here. Into turn 5, the 666 takes the lead right back.
Will Noyon have a peek into turn 6? He remains behind. I would have peeked there. But Noyon is certainly a more patient man right now. With 1.5 laps to go, there's a lapped car up ahead. Now, will that come into play here in these remaining laps? That is John Morgan in the 10th position. And John Morgan has some damage. He's entered the pit lane, of course, as well. There's no mandatory stop out there today, as obviously, as you can tell, these leaders haven't been in the pit lane. But Noyon's lacking here. He's lost a lot of time. Look at the gap. This is the biggest it's been in about 10 laps time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So for John Michael Noyon, I mean, this is the potential sort of downfall of his strategy of leaving Oldest out there. If he loses the slipstream now, he may lose the opportunity to win this thing. Into Canada corner, though. He has the draft. He closes up. A little bit deep on the brakes. Gets a little bit of a wiggle at the turn-in point. But he's able to get that car trimmed out and reset as he works now through this left-hand king. I think he's got the car a little bit more trimmed out than Oldest as well, so he's not going to be good through here. In towards the final corner. You cannot afford oversteer now. Able to hold it nicely by the way it looks like. Now you're never going to be ducking out of the slipstream. Oldest is going to be doing everything he can to break it. White flag at the starter stand, and Noyon not closing with the sort of speed we saw before, but now it really picks up with the draft. He's going to look to the outside into 1.
1 lap to go here at Road America. Noyon around the outside, and he reclaims the lead yet another time. And despite going a little wide, remains in that first position. Particulars now lacking behind. He's got another straight here, this second straight, parallel to your main straight. And with under a lap to go, Particulars will need to make this move heading into turn 5. Otherwise, it's going to be Canada corner for sure. Particulars now to reclaim that lead. Let's have a look. Oh, contact. Particulars behind. Smack the rear end of Jean-Michel Noyon. They continue unscathed. Robbins racing, boys. And Noyon sweeps in and cuts the nose of Particulars through that difficult uphill left-hander at turn 6. Here they head through the hurry downs for the final time.
And the damage shouldn't be too severe here, Johnny, with that little touch coming off of the carousel here. So Oldest Putekelis, because it was sort of straight on a relatively slow difference in speed, he shouldn't lose much with damage here as he come off the carousel. Canada corner, I think, is going to decide this race.
Who will win round 9 of the SimLab Pro Cup for 2019 here from Road America? Side by side with a lead coming up in the Canada corner. This is for maximum points here at Road America. Let's have a look. Oh, they're still alongside each other, but Particulous wins the braking battle, wins the exit battle. Noyon is going to have one more straight to go. He's going to have to remain as close as he can to the rear end of that Pro Mazda. But who is going to win here out of the run of the final corner? Particulous has the advantage, and it looks like, unless Noyon has a mammoth run across the line, which Particulous knows about, he is going to win round 9 here from Road America. Let's look at the gap. It went down, Randy, all the way to less than a 1/10 of a second.
0.08 of a second, the margin of victory. I think that's easily going to take the cake for closest margin of victory we've had all season.
100%. McCutcheon will come home in the 3rd position. So what's happened to Fabio Berchtold? Berchtold in those last few laps, something's gone wrong for him. And it happened on lap 11. So Berchtold's had a moment on lap 11, and that's demoted him from that 3rd position. And he will not finish on the podium. So a gift in disguise for him. He lost it, we're hearing, just before the carousel at turn 8. And that ended Fabio Berchtold's chances at the podium. McCutcheon ends up in 3rd, starting from 12th. But again, 3 dream stories there for your lead. And wow, what a race. Great finish, Randy. Quality over quantity.
We're queuing the replay up at the moment to see what exactly happened to Fabio Berchtold. I've just slotted it on the lap and clicked replay. So we'll see it in just a couple of moments of what has happened to this 7 machine down in the tight left-hander. And this is exactly where it got him. That's where I suspect it may have came from when you said that. Just a little bit too fast into the left-hander at the bottom of the hill and spun it round. So unfortunate there for 7, but Johnny, I think you have post-race results for us.
Certainly do. Let's have a look at your final race results for round 9 of the SimLab Pro Cup for 2019. So it is Aldous Particulous who takes race victory in just under half an hour ahead of Jean-Michel Nayon. Those two never saw anybody else for the rest of that event. I think that's a valiant podium for both those drivers, of course, as well. But Particulous gets the bragging rights with victory across the start-finish line. McCutcheon comes home in the 3rd position. He started from 12th, just 1 position ahead of last position, which was Anthony Rice. And a brilliant comeback drive by John McCutcheon. Tinkler and Berchtold ended up in the 4th and 5th position. Now, Berchtold should have been in that final podium position, but at the end of the day, just didn't do enough. Kirshner and Wagenen came home in 6th and 7th. Steve Cubey, consistent race in the 8th position. Same can be said for Anthony Rice, who claims good points in 9th. Rounding out your finishers was John Morgan. Of course, Craig Ridley and Martin Arnoldas involved in that early incident at turn number 1. Daniel Fletcher with technical issues. Could he have won this race had he not had Oculus issues on lap 1? So those are your race results here for round 9 of the SimLab Pro Cup for 2019. Anything else to say, Randy, after this event? I mean, again, another thrilling round. We head to, where is it? Montreal for the next time out at on the 13th of July, it's saying? Yes, it is. So that'll be 19 laps of action. Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, one of my favorite circuits out there in the motor racing universe. Looking forward to it for sure.
Yeah, one of the most famous, I think, racetracks in the world. I think, it's a lot of people would sort of name that as the home of the best Formula One Grand Prix of the season for, in terms of enjoyability. So I think that's going to be an insanely fun race to watch, especially, like I said, in these little Pro Mazda cars. Another track where we have a very, very long back straight, Johnny, and it's going to be fun watching these guys draft their way down that back straightaway, and then I'll sort it all out going through the Champions chicane.
Yeah, and the Wall of Champions around the outside will prove a huge challenge for these guys. That event will be in 3 weeks' time, so don't miss it. There'll be 19 laps around the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. It'll host the next round of the SimLab Pro Cup for 2019. We're already halfway through the season. We're into that second half. and the championship challenge continues. What a victory for Aldous Particulars. That race, of course, will be on RaceSpotTV, your beloved service for sim racing broadcasting. Thanks to all the viewers joining us for today's broadcast, of course, as well. I am Jonathan Simone alongside Randolph Cheneth here for today's event, who was on comms and production. Thanks as well to our RaceSpotTV team you can see on screen for all their hard work behind the scenes today, because this, for yet another time, has been a RaceSpotTV presentation. And we will say so long from Road America. See you in Montreal, the virtual Montreal, the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, in a few weeks' time.